Greg, this is Dustin. How you doing today?
Terrific. Getting better.
Well, it's great to be speaking with you. I appreciate your time today.
Okay, great.
Well, Greg, I got to ask you about, how you started out. It seems like a lot of voiceover guys get their start in radio, and I know you worked with Rick Dees early on in your career, so can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, growing up, I was just always interested in silly characters and all. Everything from Jerry Lewis to the Three Stooges and whatever I was able to watch in my earlier days. And I was even thinking back in third grade, I had a note on my report card that said Greg is constantly distracting the other students by making faces and clowning around. So that must have been the start of it for me. And then eventually, as I was growing up, I took a liking to radio, as I heard a lot of people listening to radio in Ohio when they were on their way to work or coming back from work. And I thought, what is this interesting little box that people are listening to that keeps them wanting to listen to them? And so I kind of took a liking to listening to radio myself. And in our town, there were a few radio stations with different programs from country to talk to oldies. So I would listen. I'd listen to the personalities on there and relate to them in my earlier days. And eventually in school, I took up a radio class to learn more about radio, and not really wanting to do my own show, but just being part of a show. And, kind of like in movies, you see somebody who was really funny, but the other people also supported the guy. So it wasn't that I wanted to be the big star, but I loved being part of that. So by listening to radio personalities, I got involved in pursuing radio as a career. I never knew what I was going to do with it, but I just wanted to be part of radio because it was a wide audience of listeners. And so I studied at school, and after graduating high school, I got a job at a local radio station. In fact, 3 radio stations at once, where I did various jobs as a part-timer. One, I would play music on weekends and be the DJ. At another station, I was the producer for some talk radio shows. And at another station, I just played the pre-recorded programs on weekends, the Sunday church services and whatever they ran. So I was just all into radio back then, just to be part of that atmosphere. And then I learned you can make a lot more money, I guess, from not just doing a radio show, but doing the commercials and not talking as much for those 4-hour shows. So I pursued it and heard about doing voiceovers and all that by going to Hollywood, California to do this for a bigger audience, even more so, TV, movies, and all that. And that's kind of how it all developed for me. So while I was in Hollywood, I was attending a voiceover workshop just to watch and audit to see what these voiceover people do, and that makes them so great. And while I was attending just to watch, a guy came in, said his name was Rick Dees, and he had just gotten a local morning show on an AM station. And I said, I just came from a whole big radio background in Ohio. And I was about 20 at the time, and so I was all new to the newcomers as well that were coming into town. So he says, he came in from Memphis, I believe, and he was going to do a radio show in Hollywood, and he needed people to do different crowd sounds, funny laughs or clapping or gasps or side stuff like that. And I said, sure, I've done kind of stuff like that back east when I was in radio there. So he heard what I did. Then he had asked if anybody can do impressions of any famous people at the time. And a few of the other people in the audience that was watching the workshop had said they could do Nixon or whoever was popular at the time in politics, Lyndon Johnson, Kennedy. But for this new radio show, I don't think it would have fit. And I said, well, I do celebrity impressions as best as I could. And I laid a couple of impressions of Gabe Kaplan, who was very popular at the time on Welcome Back, Kotter. So my little Gabe Kaplan was like, hey, I got a few jokes to tell you guys, and I'm also a school teacher on this sitcom. And so I would come up with a joke or something and do it in Gabe's voice. And then I said, oh, by the way, on the show, there's John Travolta, there's Ron Palillo. Ron Palillo was Horshack. And I said, I could do Horshack. And whatever other characters I could think of. And Rick kind of backed up and said, do a few of those for us. And I did. And he liked it enough to tell me to call in on a regular basis. And that kind of all started me doing voices on the Rick Dees show, which lasted 20 years in Los Angeles and worldwide. My most popular voice for him was a character we were calling John Travolta, because he also was in the Welcome Back, Kotter show. And I was basically doing John Travolta, and not really the Saturday Night Fever John Travolta, but just the airhead one from Welcome Back, Kotter, the Vinnie Barbarino character. And I would just say something stupid of the day that was going on, where I would say something like, last night I was trying to play a game with my friends. We were doing Scrabble, but I found out I didn't know how to spell. So then we started playing Trivial Pursuit, and then I found out I didn't know anything. And, we'd do something like that as a drop-in every once in a while whenever he had time to bring in something silly to do. And Rick was doing personality radio at the time, and that was big in Los Angeles. And Rick had one of those shows where you'd listen to the show on your way to work or school, and you'd want to keep listening, no matter what you had to do. And so you'd stay in the car, because he'd say, coming up is John Revolting. And we called him John Revolting because we couldn't say it was Travolta. I don't know why. I would think people would know the difference, but when you do a voice, and it's so close to whoever's voice is well known like that, you have to distinguish it either by saying it's a celebrity impressionist, or else you have to just make it a character name. So we made him a character name called John Revolting. So that's how that was born.
Yeah, that's great that it all kind of worked out for you eventually going into animation. I know after you did a lot of film and TV stuff, and a lot of people my age, I guess, remember you as Fozzie Bear, and of course as a Scooter on the Muppet Babies.
More or less, that again was kind of along the lines of my talents of being able to do impressions or voice matching of already established characters. Well, the voices I did was Muppet Baby Fozzie, which was an animated version of the grown-up Fozzie Bear from the Muppets, and Scooter. I also crafted that voice by listening to the original Scooter from the Muppet Show and tightening up the voice, because Big Scooter was more like this and saying, hey, I'm a floor manager right now, and it's time for Miss Piggy to come on stage. And so I said, well, if he was a baby, he might kind of be a little whiny and say, hey, come on, everybody, come over here. I'm working on my computer, and I'm writing jokes for Fozzie. And Fozzie Bear has to have a little tightness in his throat, too, because he was just a little baby bear. And the big Fozzie, I eventually did in an animated version as well, when they did the Muppets in animation, and part of the Muppet Babies as well. I think they call that version the Muppet Babies and Monsters, and that was a short-lived side show that they created. But they had a segment where Fozzie was grown up, only animated. And so as long as I was doing Baby Fozzie for, I think we did that one 9 years, they said, well, as long as you can do Baby Fozzie, no problem probably doing grown-up Fozzie.
Yeah, that show is still today so beloved, and I hope that I'm sure the fans do as well. Now that Disney bought up Lucasfilms and Star Wars, they hopefully will see that come out maybe on DVD or Netflix or something along those lines.
I know the Muppet Babies never came out on DVD, but there are versions on YouTube that you can show to the kids, because it was a very classic show and should be out there on major TV networks and cable stations that carry that kind of themed, family-oriented programming. It's whatever reason that they're not out there now on those shows, it has something to do with the company that owns them and whatever reasons they have. But we did 9 years of these shows, and people I meet at various conventions who are probably in their 30s now thank me for being part of their childhood and helping them laugh and have fun and not be turned off by screaming cartoons or bizarre cartoons that they couldn't understand as a kid. These were well-crafted cartoons and well-crafted shows, and intertwined with live-action film clips as well. Like if the Muppet Babies were in their nursery, they looked under their bed, they might see a clip of the Star Wars fighting scene, the spaceships going through the air or something like that, and they couldn't believe what they saw in there. But it had a little something for everybody, movie fans and cartoon fans and Muppet fans. And that was one of the bigger cartoons that people know me for and that you brought up. I'm also known for filling in voices on films, sound-alikes for various celebrities in various films. Another side on the animation side, I was also part of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when one of the original voices had the job of president of the Screen Actors Guild, so he couldn't make a few of the recordings of their maybe 200 shows that they've done. So I filled in for about 8 weeks for him on 8 various shows, or 7 shows, copying his voice as best I could to keep the flow of the production of that show running. So depending if you like cute and furry cartoons or action cartoons such as Ninja Turtles, you may have heard me somewhere.
Yeah, Greg, I want to ask you about that time, if you can kind of describe, during the 80s for voiceover artists, there were so many cartoons and so many commercials, and every cereal had a mascot, and it was just it seemed like a lot of work, a great time to be a voiceover artist.
It was. From what I understand, there maybe were about 100 people that grew from the original voice pool that was Mel Blanc and Dawes Butler from the 50s, 60s, and early 70s in cartoons. People started to catch on and say maybe they can do that type of work, or how they liked doing that kind of work, and it grew little by little. And when I came on the scene, I was in my 20s to 30s, and by that time, a lot of the next generations off of Mel Blanc and Dawes were in their 40s and 50s, so I kind of was one of the younger guys that fit into the group when they needed a younger voice. So here I was doing young versions of the Muppet Babies, or the Muppets as babies, and fit in well, luckily, from great training with, I had to study with Dawes Butler, who was the voice of many of the cartoons I watched growing up for Hanna-Barbera. He was Yogi Bear, Quick Draw McGraw, Huckleberry Hound. And so I studied under his tutelage as best I could to understand where he was coming from, so I could emulate the work, hopefully, for other people growing up watching cartoons. And so we were just talking, just to say how many people were around. I would say there was like a pool of about 100 people back then who could do multiple voices, and that's probably why you've seen a lot of their names on almost every cartoon back then. So since then, it has grown another generation, and there's more channels now, and more cartoons, and more Cartoon Network type channels. So everybody is now doing anything from their own voices speaking to some veterans, cartoonists, like to come up with programs that are doing cartoons like old school cartoons, some rubbery voices or silly voices like that. Voice business itself. So this is great. I enjoy talking about whatever you want to take me to in that area.
Well, yeah, nowadays, with the different conventions and, so many people that grew up in that generation keeping those old shows alive. So it's really kind of seen a resurgence as far as, all those cartoons from the 80s and in the early 90s.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to be part of, understanding what the original cartoons that used to be out were all about. They had a story and they had characters, and that's kind of what helped make a good cartoon, I felt. And so when maybe during the 90s, late 90s, I kind of watched the newer cartoons coming out, and they were wild and wacky, but I don't know whether it was the writing or the characters, but some didn't stick with me, and I don't know. Now they're having a resurgence of bringing back Invader Zim and some of the Cow and Chicken and whatever from those years. But I wasn't part of that scene. I was then taken aside doing some freelance work on. I actually did a robot voice for a kids game show that Mark Summers from Double Dare was doing. And the show was called Pick Your Brain. And that was based on a toy robot called 2XL that a lot of people got for Christmas. And a lot of kids had a little cassette put in there, and it would ask questions, and another intelligent little toy. And they turned it into a TV game show for kids. And I was the voice of the robot, only he had a video screen on his stomach. And I recreated his voice as well. That was a recreated voice. So I do original voices, and then I do impressions, and that made up my career. And has taken me all over the place these days, because I've been doing this about 35 years now.
Yeah, you've definitely been on so many shows that people love, and I got to ask you, I guess, your thoughts on, cartoons or animated films now, as far as maybe studios using famous actors to do the voices instead of the voiceover artists. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I always figured one day if I made the leap over the line because I'm also an on-camera actor, when I get the opportunity or something that fits with what I do, I've studied with Harvey Lembeck for my on-camera acting, and he at the time was coaching John Ritter and Williams and a lot of the people from Happy Days, and I was looking to be in that type of pool for TV, and then maybe say, oh, by the way, I do voices. And so keeping my doors open to do on-stage and on-camera TV, film, comedy roles or behind-the-scene voice roles. And so if that was going to happen and I became a well-known visual fixture in entertainment, I would probably be in some of these films as well, in demand to be, a celebrity voice talent. That can still happen, but a lot of my voice work has been behind the scenes currently, and I'm seeing the other celebrities doing that, and I said, well, that could have been me or could be me, so good for them. If they want to do that, that's fine. If people are upset to seeing them, well, I can understand them being upset, saying, oh, it's just a normal actor doing the voice, but whoever is behind hiring them chose them for a reason.
Sure. Well, Greg, as you mentioned, 35 years in the business, and obviously the Muppet Babies, and you mentioned Donatello on Ninja Turtles, but you did, the Simpsons and Garfield and Friends, Hanna-Barbera. Is it possible for you to pick maybe a favorite character or a favorite show you've been on over the years?
Well, after doing it all these years, I mean, that's why I'm still doing it, because I still love what I'm doing and coming up with some new characters, whether it's original or recreating something new. I didn't get stuck with loving one particular character. Otherwise, maybe I'd just be doing that for the rest of my career. But the way the business changes, I adapted to it and always have fun coming up with something new. I never know what I'm going to do the next day. In a few days, I've got an audition for just a straight announcer for a company's commercial, and it would just be me talking more or less. And who knows, maybe that would be somebody that I like doing all the time or something. But it just, as far as favorites go, it depends what kind of mood I'm in, too. I loved all the work I've laid out there. Otherwise, it would come off really stiff or something. And so I've learned to love each creation that I come up with, because that's what it is. It's a creation, and it's like an artist who makes a painting. He's not going to go and put a big X over it and say, I don't like this one. He'll say, okay, I got one like that. Now let's do another one.
Awesome. Well, Greg, I know you're a busy guy. Again, I appreciate your time. Is there anything else maybe in the works or anything else upcoming you want to mention?
Well, luckily, I've taken on some new appearance managers who are finding various conventions for me to attend and get out to meet some of the people that are probably of age now to attend conventions and reminisce of the old shows I've worked on. I do autograph signings if that's what they'd like, if they want me to speak. I also enjoy talking about, like in this particular case with this show, we were just talking about what I've been through, but if anybody likes me to coach them with voiceovers, I can do that. If somebody wants me to speak about what the voiceover business is about, I can do that. So I'm one of these entrepreneurs that are very flexible, and this interview that we're having here is pretty interesting because in the past I've had some where I'm just doing nothing but the characters that I've been known for, and others I might come off talking about, and I did this and that, but I'm not that type of person. So I feel very relaxed and comfortable talking with you about just stuff I'm doing. If somebody were to ask me, another thing I really love doing, which is when I'm not doing voiceovers, but I tie it into voiceovers, is motivational speaking. And I found that I've inspired many people by accident, more or less, but I do have a purpose here to come across and tell people how, no matter all the stuff that I've done with my voice career and all that, I did that with my voice career. Well, other people are out there that want to do something else totally different or similar. I love encouraging them with my motivational talk of how they can do whatever it is that they like to do and help them understand how to do that. So, who knows, I might be out there speaking somewhere, or if someone wants to invite me, I'd love to. I've always got something to keep me busy.
Awesome. Greg, again, I'm a big fan of yours. I appreciate your time, and I hope maybe I'll run into you on some of these conventions sometime down the road.
Terrific. Yeah, depending. Now, where are you guys located?
We are in Minnesota right now.
All righty. Yeah, nice place. Yeah. Because I know they had Steppenwolf Theater out there. I know Minnesota just from their reputation of good theater.
Well, yeah, if you're ever in the area and want to, plug anything else, just let me know. I'd be happy to help.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, thanks again for the interview.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I'm a big fan, and thanks so much for being on with me today.
All right. Good luck with everything there.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Sure. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.